Hi, my name is Megan Stewart, and this is my presentation for my internship this summer at the Bright House. My objectives for this presentation are to be able to understand my project and how it relates to public health issues addressed, for my audience to understand how the upstream approach relates to my project, and to be able to identify how I used it, and to be able to identify resources in situations of need for either yourself or for situations you may find others in. So, a little bit about me. I am 22 years old. I have graduated from Georgia College as a public health major with a minor in sociology. And currently, I am doing interviews and have not secured a job yet. So, a little about the Bright House is that we have 4 staff on site. It is a child advocacy and sexual assault center. Our umbrella organization that we are under is called Southern Crescent Sexual Assault and Child Advocacy Centers. And what we do is we get referrals from either DFACS or police, as you can see on the screen from my diagram. First, we get referrals from law enforcement or DFACS pertaining to a case, and then the victim or client will come to the interview and they will fill out paperwork as well as do the forensic interview, which stands in court and is done ethically by our interviewer, Ashley. And that means that no suggestive questions are being asked. We do not really repeat questions because we are not trying to get answers. And we are making sure that it will be able to stand in court if the case comes to where the offender is sentenced. And then we also do medicals sometimes with the interviews, but usually that's only for sexual assault cases and in sometimes very extreme physical abuse cases where you can see visible marks. And our licensed nurse practitioner, Katie, she does the medicals, and you need consent for those. And usually 12 years old and up, they can give consent for a medical. And you can opt not to, but it is sometimes required by DFACS and by law enforcement. But we are here to make sure that we provide all the resources, all the support, and make sure that the client slash victim feels safe in our facility. So after we've done the interview and after we've done the medical to get all the information for DFACS and police, we give them a folder of resources to look through depending on their age group. And we also give a list of referrals for counseling. And we do have counseling that most of our clients do opt to take with our in-house counselor, Antoinette, and she's specializing in play therapy, which is absolutely amazing. And I created for her a gender abacus to use, which we'll talk about later on. But the last thing on this diagram is MDT, which stands for multidisciplinary team. And this is where all of Bright House staff, law enforcement representative, a school social worker representative, and then a DFACS representative will all meet once a month. And this is just to update everyone on cases, update everyone on living situations, on school performance, on sentencing for offenders, on custody, and so forth. And this basically just gets everyone in the room so no victim gets lost in the system, and so that they can have a cooperative meeting to where they not only address and update those cases, but they also talk about some of the things that they can improve with their system that they have. So these are my two other interns that I was with this summer at Bright House. There were four staff, Joanna being our program director, Shelly being our advocate, Ashley being our interviewer, and Antoinette being our counselor. Those are four full-time. And then we have Katie, who comes in once a week from the Hampton office to do medicals. And she is amazing and also really helped me um, figure out if advocacy was the right path for me. But Bishop and Morgan were really amazing, and I had a lot of fun with them. And we got a lot done around Bright House as well. So, some of the things that happened at Bright House, some of the daily tasks day to day were scanning in paperwork onto a USB, and that is for grant money. They use that for statistics, but it's to give all the information and have it be universal for their system, as well as accessible for either GBI or law enforcement or DFACS. Um, I would also answer the phones and take messages. Me and the other interns decorated the front lawn with pinwheels to promote child abuse awareness. And then for interviews and whenever we had counseling appointments, we would greet guests. And at the end of the day, we would close up the house, which would mean closing the blinds, turning off the TVs, cleaning the bathrooms, and so forth. And these are just a couple of pictures of some creations that I made. And this one on the table is the resource manual, which we'll go over a little bit later. But these two on this side in the right-hand corner, top and bottom, the top one is bracelets that I made for our toy box. And I had a client that came in and she really liked all of my bracelets that I made myself, and I wanted to make some appropriate ones because those types of bracelets are normally known with the party and club community, but I know they're very fun and they're very appealing for kids. And I wanted to write really empowering messages on them. So some say spread love, some say be kind, you are loved, bright, bright house, and so forth. And then on the bottom right, we have toy boxes that I put pictures on just so kids can be able to identify them easier. Um, Especially with younger kids, they may not be able to see, they may not understand what some of those objects are. So I just made it a little bit easier. But these are some of the Instagram posts that I made for the Bright House Instagram. I made these and looked up awareness days for June, July, and these are some of them. Um, and then here's the gender abacus that I was talking about earlier. So this is just a picture frame with wire wrapped around. And what you do is there's 12 beads and you can separate the beads depending on your preference. So if I was going through this, I first would start with biological and I would put it all the way to girl. And then identities, I identify as she, they. So I would kind of split that up however I choose. Um, I might do 6 and 6 because there's 12 beads. I might do 10 and 2. It really depends on how I'm feeling. And then expression, I can split that up the same way as identities, and then attraction, so forth. So there's many combinations. You can split them up halfway. You can split them up um, 10 and 2, you can split them up 5 and 7, but this is used for that purpose to be able to identify and kind of figure out your sexuality. I made this for Antoinette to be able to use with clients who are kind of questioning and really confused, as well as for parents so they can understand a little bit better. And it's a very, very nice visual on how gender is fluid and how you can have very, very many combinations, and it's not just binary. And then this is my resource manual. So in there, to start with, I saw there were only about 5 pages, but they each were relating to a specific topic. So I took that and I created 5 sections. And what I did is I created people and places. So this was sexual assault agencies, this was our contact list, this was residential treatment facilities, and then legal included Victims' Bill of Rights, statute of um, sexual assault statutes, all the laws on that for Georgia. And then financial included victim compensation and how to obtain unemployment and resources for childcare. And then education and statistics were CDC handouts that I found. Rape prevention, STD prevention, what is LGBTQ, all the pamphlets on STDs, and the statistics for domestic violence as well. And then the last one, tools and handouts, I included strangulation screenings as well as mental health screenings. And the handouts included flyers like you see here with this Amaze sexual violence resources. And my favorite one, which is under that, but you can't see it, it's a consent flow chart from amaze.com. I love that website, and I'll talk a little bit more about it later on. But the flow charts goes through all these different situations, but at the end it says, no, you do not have to hug them if you do not want to. Even if they did all this stuff, even if they're their family member, you do not have to hug them if you don't want to. Just a little lesson on consent that I really loved. But the upstream approach, what is it? So, the upstream approach is looking at social issues or public health issues and not necessarily just putting band-aids on them, but focusing on how did this start and if we can stop that or prevent that. So, how does this apply to people? Say you see an issue with teen pregnancy and you see an issue with young youth having sex, getting STDs, getting STIs. How would you address that? Normally, people would just restrict the amount of technology, put parental controls, they would punish. Um, you make laws such as abortion bills, or you restrict, you age restrict condoms and birth control to prevent that. When in reality, it's all from a lack of education. You have to start with the education first. So, yes, you can put age restrictions on those condoms, but you also should start educating youth when they're in 5th grade or 6th grade or even younger um, on consent, safety, birth control, body confidence, and so forth. But why is this important to the Bright House and what we do? So, what I saw and what created my project was a lack of education and consistent, not consistent, but multiple cases that were relating to kind of the same issue. So, and COVID-19, of course. My objectives for that project were to demonstrate what critical race theory is, LGBTQ and technology use of today's youth, and COVID and abuse, to be able to analyze and refer an individual to the correct resources dependent on their situation, and to identify the warning signs of abuse, poor mental health, and so forth. So, how I did my project and my planning is I started with what I knew. And what I knew was last fall, fall of 2020, I was in community health, and my service learning was with Baldwin After School High Achievers. And this is a high school after school program here in Milledgeville. And what we did is every Wednesday we would meet, and it would be Mental Health Wednesdays. And I would have a lesson plan and a PowerPoint, and I would just basically talk through it with them, have a discussion. So this is where I got my base structure. And I used amaze.org to create those. So I used that a lot to kind of figure out what topics I needed to really address. And then my favorite professor in the whole world, Dr. Stephanie McClure, sociology professor at GCSU. I absolutely love her class structure. I loved the openness and the drivenness she was to bring awareness about abuse, about racism, about inhumanity, and the way she made her class so home-like, and it was a discussion, not a debate, is how I wanted to pose my lessons as. It's not a debate, it's a discussion, and I'm not trying to tell you you're wrong. I'm not telling you you're wrong because we are going over invalidation, but I am trying to educate you and get you to think about a lot of issues that happen that Bright House deals with. But my structure for the lesson plans included purpose, objectives, my content, and then an activity, and of course, a list of my resources and citations for statistics that I used. What I did is I first created 4 lesson plans that can be taught with activities and resources attached. So for critical race theory, we have here why teach it. And I chose this one because it's very controversial right now. And it is really misunderstood. It's not saying, it's not belittling white people. It is not trying to make people feel bad. That is not the purpose of critical race theory. That's not the purpose of any theory, really. Critical race theory, its purpose is to take the historical context of the nation and their cultural context and intersect it to understand more about the social issue, how it started, and how we can possibly find ways to solve those issues. My LGBTQ lesson was a overview of what LGBTQ is, to give some information, and also to give resources to counselors and parents for when someone comes to them, they will now know what to say, how to talk to victims, and also some resources to point them to as well. And I included my gender abacus in this lesson as well, with a workshop on how to create your own. COVID-19 and abuse was my main one that I was focused on. This really, really affected Bright House because they were seeing during quarantine and during COVID that there were a lack of cases being reported. And I definitely saw this my first month there. And we really didn't have many cases or any cases really for the first 3 weeks. And that's because due to COVID and due to quarantine, as you can see, victims are with their offender. And either the abuse is starting or the abuse progresses and gets worse and becomes an everyday, all day thing where they have no escape. And it doesn't get reported due to the fact that kids are out of school and teachers aren't seeing those physical signs or those behavioral signs. And then technology in today's youth, because of COVID-19, technology has grown so much in the past year. So this lesson was just giving a little bit of my secrets as I am 22 years old on some new social media and technology and some of the uses that youth use and how they can prevent some of the issues that come out of that, such as sexting, child pornography, grooming as well, and to also not bash technology but teach that while it does keep people connected and it is a huge, huge platform to create on and has created many, many jobs, it is very, very dangerous and it can turn into a very slippery slope. And not when you delete something, it isn't really deleted. So, my implementation, I was planning on meeting with counselors to go over these plans, but it was really difficult to coordinate dates in order to meet due to their schedule and them getting back to a somewhat normal routine after COVID, getting back fully into their schools. So, what I did is I did 3 videos that basically are a YouTube style of these topics. So, LGBTQ, I just made my breakfast and kind of talked about some issues. Technology, I got ready and I was doing my hair and I did my makeup. And then for COVID was just a sit down talk video because COVID and abuse is a very, very hard topic to talk about. But I did not do critical race theory for the reason that I wanted it to remain a lesson and that I did not feel qualified enough to sit here and talk about it. Even though I did do the lesson, I did not feel comfortable doing a video on it. So therefore, there are 3 videos that I created, and they are all on YouTube for the purpose of being more accessible, reaching a little bit of a bigger audience. But what I do wish is that I had an in-person audience that I could interact with, and I wish that it could have been implemented a little bit better, meaning that actually me teaching it or the schools accepting a resource manual or looking over the lesson plans or a teacher adopting it. I really do wish that I had more time to complete that. But in all, I am very thankful for this opportunity. Bright House was the perfect place to intern for, and I couldn't have asked for a better summer, really. It opened up so many options and so many careers within advocacy that I didn't even know about. And the experience that I gained from watching how staff at Bright House deal with clients was and is unmatched, and I could not give it away for anything. So, thank you so much for listening. I thank all the Bright House staff. You guys were like my best friends this summer. It was so great getting to hang out with you guys, and hopefully, I'll come back soon. I just want to thank Georgia College for giving me the piece of paper that I need to graduate, and really for giving me my professors in my classes that allowed me to graduate, but that really opened up my mind. And then thank you to all my professors, especially you, Dr. K. Um, I wouldn't have graduated without you guys, so thank you. And then all my counselors, I really wouldn't be here without you guys. So thank you, everyone. Um, Lastly, I do have a Kahoot that if I was in person, I would be doing just as an ender to get an evaluation on this presentation. But thank you guys so much, and I will see you when I come visit.